You are listening to an episode of Audiotravels by Henry Barshett.
For a lot of travelers, Ukraine is a blank spot on the map. Although it's one of the biggest countries in Europe, it is rarely on anyone's bucket list. Lena Tarasyuk from Ukraine would like to change this. She runs the website travelmonkey.com, and she wrote a guidebook called Insane Ukraine. I asked Lena why a traveler should visit her country.
There are a lot of people out there who are looking for something more exciting and something more out of the ordinary. I think Ukraine is actually at the stage. The country is developing so fast these days, then I'm pretty sure it will be willing to surprise any traveler.
The best place to start a journey through Ukraine is Lviv, says Lena.
If you're traveling to Ukraine for the first time and you want to make sure that you go into the safe place that already knows how to receive tourists and has all the facilities for it in terms of the language, in terms of tours offered, in terms of good hotels, Lviv is your safest choice because they're already, reached that level and they know how to accommodate for that.
Lviv is a UNESCO World Heritage Site with lots of churches, museums and a historic downtown. But the city has much more to offer.
They have a very good theme around cafes. They have a lot of cafes that they make thematic. So, for example, they have a house in honor of Mazak, who, invented masochism, I think where it comes from. So they have a special cafe with that theme. They have cafes with the fairy tales theme. They have cafes with army theme and all these, kind of things, and they are really fun in a way. They hire actors to perform, so you would be confused whether you're in the cafe or whether you just entered somebody's private apartment.
The other famous city is Kiev. This is the place to get in touch with the young history of the country, the Orange Revolution and the Maidan.
The history, we always talk about going to historic places that took place like 200 years ago. This is the history that took place 3 years ago. And you go there and it still feels, you could still get the chills because you understand that something happened really recently and it's still very recent, but it's already a part of history. They already left a few things as they were just to, to signify those events. So they didn't clean everything up. And you can well imagine, there was the building that burned down, there was Maidan, and you can imagine what force, happened on this wide street. It's a very popular place for, I would say, a place for democracy in the country, because as soon as something goes wrong, that's the place where everybody goes, to say their no or yes, whatever is happening. But there is the streets that you could take. I think they renamed it these days to the heroes of Maidan, where you can go and kind of maybe if you have a guide or someone to take you the story of what happened when along that street.
If you travel south, you will arrive in another well-known city, Odessa.
Odessa is a very special place. When I was there, I couldn't really identify it with Ukraine or Russia or Europe. It's very a mix of everything. And when I talk about Odessa, because a lot of people ask me about that place because it has access to the sea. So a lot of people, have an eye on it because it's a nice, relaxing vacation. So in Odessa, there are also places where the local artists came together, the dreamers are the ones that wanted to change the world and, the poets and things like that. So it's also a very inspirational city. And when you walk the streets, you would see all these old buildings and it would have architectural sign on it saying that someone important lived here. So it's fascinating in that sense as well, that it also has a lot of culture, Jewish culture, a lot of Russian culture, German, French, whatever. And at the same time, it also has immediate access to the Black Sea, which it makes it like a great beach holiday because, you can still be in the city and then just go swim in the sea during the day, tan and relax at the bar.
But Lena also talks about other cities, places most people have never heard of, like Chernivtsi.
What's very interesting about Chernivtsi is that it is surprisingly multicultural. The reason for that is because Ukraine is mainly homogeneous society, all right? We don't have a lot of foreigners, but in Chernivtsi, the universities and the education is so good that it attracts a lot of foreign students. So you would walk the streets of this small city and you would see people from India, people from Africa, people from China who study there and live there. So you would actually surprisingly hear a lot of English on the street. And also because the city in itself has cultural impacts all the way back from Austro-Hungarian Empire. It was a very important center at that time when that part of Ukraine was under Austro-Hungary, that it has a lot of similarities with Austria, for example, in the architecture and things like that. So it's like a little gem in a place where you don't expect to see it. And that's why I liked it a lot, and I thought it's worth visiting and writing about.
On her website, she also takes her readers to her hometown Rivne, where they come across a natural wonder.
There's a very famous natural phenomenon called the Tunnel of Love. It's been viral on internet as one of the, unreal natural spots that you have to see and things like that. And it's basically just a tunnel made of trees where the train goes. So it's overgrown, though it's the train tracks overgrown with trees that has very different nature to it. If you visit in winter and in summer, it will look completely different but beautiful all the way, because the nature adds all its colors. So it's situated very close to Rivne. It's just 20 minutes drive away. So I think Rivne has a potential of becoming a really good hub on the way to a lot of other natural sites that are situated around Rivne.
But to experience traditional Ukrainian life, take a trip to the countryside.
Countryside is very colorful, and it is, I think it's one of the things that would be very interesting and peculiar to see, almost exotic, because this is, all these jokes about babushkas and things like that. This is where they come from. The challenge would be that the roads on the countryside are really bad. And I have to say that as it is, because this is, I think, one of the major problems Ukraine has, is that our roads are really bad. So traveling independently becomes a challenge, especially if you want to go outside big cities. But one of the things where you could experience, what I could definitely suggest to the travelers if they would like to see more specific culture in a small cities or villages, is to go to the mountains, to the Carpathians, because the culture there in those villages is even different to the rest of Ukraine. So when Ukrainians go on holiday to Carpathian Mountains, they also come back surprised about the food that Carpathian people eat, the way they speak, and what they do, because it's peculiar even to Ukrainians.
Here, you can taste the country's local food.
It would be very interesting for foodies to travel to Ukraine, because it's not something typical that you can encounter in Europe. The food is probably considered rather heavy on your stomach, because we put a lot of sour cream in everything. We like fatty meat, potatoes. We have a lot of things made from cottage cheese and other sorts of dairy. But it also tells that there is a lot of options for both meat eaters and vegetarians, because we have cottage cheese pancakes that are fried in butter. We have things that is made rolled into cabbage leaves. Something that's also very, very hard to make, but it tastes really good. And basically put sour cream on everything. I think every product that I mentioned in my book, it comes with the sour cream on top of that.
And the Ukrainians still celebrate their traditions.
We have a holiday, I think, that's resembling midsummer in the West, but ours is special because it's called Ivana Kupala. It's celebrated on 7th of July. It does come from a pagan holiday where the summer is finally, there's the break even between the day is becoming even with the night, and people go outside. It's usually a day spent outside with a lot of fires. It started, and it's very typical again with the villages when people dance around the fire and they jump across the fire as well. And when I was a little kid, the girls, we used to make those round circles with flowers that you see often when there's a, picturing of Ukrainian woman. She has flowers in her hair. So we used to make those decoration out of flowers. And if you put it into the river, it's supposed to float the way where your future love is going to live.
But when Ukraine is on the news, it is because of the military conflict in the east of the country. However, this should not stop you from visiting the country, says Lena.
Whatever happens bad, that's on a very teeny tiny part of the country, which is very far east on the border with Russia. The rest of the 95% of the country lives their old ordinary life, and the life goes on. They don't live in terror or in a war zone. And I'm pretty sure that whoever comes to visit, they will be able to see it with their own eyes, and this whole myth of unsafe country will, disappear.
To learn more about Ukraine, go to Lena's website travelmonkey.com or read her travel guide, Insane Ukraine.
You were listening to an episode of Audio Travels by Henry Barshett.